welcome everyone. This is class number 12 of the July 2023 Ibis Prep MBE crash course. And we actually did a poll of all of the contestants in the room to determine which was the best bar prep company. And it was actually 100% in favor of Ibis Prep, completely unbiased. So we're going to continue with this polling feature and see if we can answer some questions today. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. Let's do some questions. I think real property is as hard as it gets. So we're going to rely on those polling numbers to kind of help me, help you, help me. I'll start off by reading the first one. Let's see if we can start with like a super short one. I always like to start with a real short one to just get the mind ready, and then we'll ease into the longer ones. Okay, this is about as short as it gets. So if the seller prevails, what will be the most likely explanation? And give me a minute figuring out this polling thing. So the first question might take a second longer, but I'm sure I'll get the hang of it. So a buyer validly contracted in writing to buy improved land from a seller. The contract had no contingencies and was silent as to the risk of loss if there was damage to or destruction of property improvements between contract and closing, and as to any duty to carry insurance. As soon as the parties signed the contract, the seller, who had already moved out, canceled her insurance covering the land. The buyer did not know this and did not obtain insurance. A few days later, 3 weeks before the agreed closing date, the building on the land was struck by lightning and burned to the ground. There's no applicable statute. In appropriate action, the buyer asserted the right to cancel the contract and to recover his earnest money. The seller said that because the risk of fire loss had passed to the buyer before the buyer must perform. If the seller prevails, what will be the most likely explanation? And please, nobody answer until you get the poll. This is cool. Once the parties signed the contract, only the buyer had an insurable interest and so could protect against the loss. The buyer's constructive possession arising from the contract gave him the affirmative duty of protecting against loss by fire. The seller's cancellation of her casualty insurance caused the risk of loss to transfer to the buyer. Upon execution of the contract, the buyer became the equitable owner of the land upon the doctrine of equitable conversion. So give me one moment. Bisc is crying. How do I see the screen while I'm doing this? Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry. I told you it'd take me a second. Everyone have their answers ready because I'm going to do a new poll. So and I'm sure I'll get better at this as my life goes on. I'll probably have them preloaded or something. That's what I'll start doing. I'll let people read the question. I'll read the poll and I'll load the poll. Okay. Can everyone see? You can go ahead and answer if you see.
Andrew, can you scroll up so I can read the question again?
Yeah. Did I make A an answer or no?
No.
Oh, it's the question.
Oh, well, A is not the answer. So it's B, C, or D. I made this one easy.
Okay.
All right, everyone's picking D. Literally everyone, except one person picked B. But D is rocking, right? So I think we can rock with D here. And trust me, my polling feature is going to get better. My dog's going to hopefully get quieter. This is equitable conversion. Everyone understand the doctrine of equitable conversion, that the risk of loss will pass to the buyer during that period of escrow after the contract and before the closing? All right. Let's also have our cheat sheet up right now. Everyone should be following along. They should know where to get the materials. Thank you all for bearing with me for a second. So, sorry, cram guide. I think this is a great document for everyone to look over, right? We see contracts, we got a lot of cool points. Torts, we got a lot of cool points. Common law, we got a lot of cool points. What is the type of title that stays with both the seller and the buyer? Is that title insurance? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question, to be honest. I don't know. I have to see the question. Or maybe someone else can answer.
I think she's talking about the questionnaire. There was like a question about title insurance. Like if the seller buys title insurance and then it stays with the seller, right? The insurance, like the buyer would have to purchase new title insurance, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have the questionnaire in front of me. I'm not exactly sure that title question, to be honest. That might be more math questions. 6, 11, 23. And the first thing that we learned today is the doctrine of equitable conversion, right? Under doctrine of conversion, risk of loss passes to buyer after contract before closing during period of escrow. All right, excellent. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything title related to this question, to be honest. I don't know, but we'll see. There's going to be hard questions. There's going to be tons of hard questions. All right. Lex, are you with us?
Yep.
Do you mind reading this question while I figure out this polling situation?
Yeah, sure. May the agent conduct the closing? A recent widow is trying to sell her home and downsize to a much smaller home in a retirement community. The widow has an attorney and a licensed real estate agent helping her sell the old home and purchase the new home. The widow and the attorney have disagreed throughout the process, while the widow and the agent get along very well. In fact, when the widow has a question, she always calls the agent first to avoid speaking with the attorney. The agent has been working in real estate for 20 years. Prior to that time, he graduated from law school but was never licensed. The widow is closing on the new home next week. She does not wish to have the attorney be present out of personal dislike for him, although she does have several legal questions about the process. May the agent conduct the closing? A, yes, the agent may conduct the closing and answer the widow's legal questions. B, yes, the agent may conduct the closing but may not answer the widow's legal questions. C, no, the agent may not conduct the closing but may answer the widow's legal questions. D, no, the agent may neither conduct the closing nor answer the widow's legal questions.
Excellent job. Can we please not have any jokes about the deaths of celebrity game show contestants? Because that took me for a loop yesterday when someone was joking that Vanna White was dead, but she's not. All right. Can everyone take your opportunity to answer this question? So mostly B's, mostly B is in basketball. The agent may conduct the closing but not answer the widow's legal questions. That's right. Johanna says you can't see the poll. I'm sorry, Johanna. Next one you'll see, because it seems like most people did see it. All right. And we understand what the rule of law is here, right? Is that most states do not require closings to be conducted by an attorney, although if a non-attorney does conduct it, and he or she may not offer legal services as if they were an attorney, right? Pretty easy piece is that most states, you do not need to be an attorney to conduct closing. But non-attorney may not answer legal questions. So I have a friend, associate, Jeff Levy, who does tax and title. He does title law here in Miami, Florida. His son, Michael Levy, was one of my students who passed the bar exam, and he's very successful. Why? Because you don't need an attorney to conduct a closing, but the non-attorney can't answer any legal questions. So wouldn't it be nice to have an attorney do your closing? That's why it's actually good business to be an attorney who handles closings. Just some thoughts. All right, Joanna, we're going to see if we can help you out here. Can someone read this question? How about Natalie Landman?
Yeah.
You mind?
Okay. Yeah. If the court holds for the owner in this action, it will most likely be because The owner of Greenacre, a tract of land, mortgaged Greenacre to a bank to secure his pre-existing obligation to the bank. The mortgage was promptly and properly recorded. The owner and the buyer then entered into a valid written contract for the purchase and sale of Greenacre, which provided for the transfer of a marketable title free of encumbrances. The contract did not expressly refer to the mortgage. Shortly after entering into the contract, the buyer found another property that much better suited her needs and decided to try to avoid her contract with the owner. When the buyer discovered the existence of the mortgage, she asserted that the title was encumbered and that she would not close. The owner responded by offering to provide for payment and discharge of the mortgage at the closing from the proceeds of the closing. The buyer refused to go forward and the owner brought an appropriate action against her for specific performance. So if the court holds for the owner in this action, it will most likely be because, shall I read the answer choices? Or no? Oh, okay. A, the mortgage is not entitled to priority because it was granted for pre-existing obligations. B, the doctrine of equitable conversion supports the result. C, the owner's arrangements for the payment of the mortgage fully satisfied the owner's obligation to deliver marketable title. D, the existence of the mortgage was not the buyer's real reason for refusing to close.
All right, just take a minute. Matter of fact, 2 or 3. And let's. I really feel like I have a potential in game show hosting. And once I learned what Pat Sajak makes, the person who does Wheel of Fortune, I really want to do it. So we're all going with C. Right, and this means that people are paying attention, right? If we can have marketable title, meaning there's a mortgage on the property, but we can pay off the mortgage with the sale of the house, then that is marketable title. A legal Jeopardy game show, yeah. Someone please. My neighbor 3 doors down is like a super famous TikToker, and she said she's gonna help me. So let's see, how can we explain this? We can explain this by saying, if there is a mortgage on the house, but the sale of the house will pay it off, there is no issue of marketable title because the proceeds of the closing will remove any encumbrances. Does that make sense? All right, cool. A legal Jeopardy game show. So yeah, my neighbor 2 doors down, she is the TikToker for, I think his name is Dr. Miami or something. I think he does breast implants. And she's like really, if you know her, yeah. Do you know her, Lexi? You're saying, you know, her name's Santina.
My gosh, yeah. I know who she is and I follow her, but
Yeah, her mom still lives here. She moved out. I think now she lives in like an influencer place on the beach. But I used to tutor her for the LSAT. She decided that law school wasn't for her, and I think she made the right choice. All right. Let's see. Can anyone read this one? Grace, do you mind reading this one?
Sorry, I was having trouble here. Okay, will the man be likely to prevail? The man owned, a man owned land. He took out a loan that was secured by a mortgage on the land. The man had personal liability on the loan. The man sold the land to a purchaser who expressly assumed the mortgage debt. The purchaser failed to make 2 installment payments. To prevent the default and foreclosure, the man paid the overdue installments. After making the payments, the man sued the purchaser for reimbursement. Will the man be likely to prevail? A, no, because the man did not initiate foreclosure proceedings before seeking reimbursement. B, no, because the man was personally liable on the loan. C, yes, because the law of suretyship permits the man to seek reimbursement. D, just because the man's transfer of the land discharged him from any personal liability on the loan.
Awesome. Awesome. Well done. So everyone take a minute. I'm going to load up this poll. Are we liking this poll thing so far? We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I gotta end this one. New poll. New poll, who this? Ooh, I like this. We have variance. There we go. Yeah, A is looking lonely. Someone pick A. All right. I feel like this is actually super fun for me now. Let's do some math. 4 plus 7 is 11. Plus 5 is 16. Wow, the whole class voted. This is so amazing. So I hate to call you out, but will someone speak on behalf of the A delegation? If they so choose. All right, maybe A is silent. He did not initiate before seeking reimbursement. All right. What about B? Anyone want to speak on behalf of the B delegation? Okay, B is looking silent. What about the C delegation? Anyone want to speak on behalf of the C delegation? Why do you think C is the answer? All right. Does anyone want to speak on behalf of the D delegation? Why do you think D is the answer?
I can.
For D, go ahead. Oh.
It says expressly assume the mortgage, so assumption of the mortgage, so now he becomes liable.
Okay, I'll hold that. Anyone want to retort this? Are you
Yeah,
on
I wanted to C. I was in C.
Let's hear it, Grace. Why?
Because he said assume. Well, the person buying is first liable, and then the other person second liable.
And what is another word for being secondarily liable?
Suretyship.
Yes, that's what a secondary liability entails, suretyship. So I'm going to line myself with the C delegation. And I think the answer is C, because here's how it works. If you expressly assume a mortgage, then you, the new mortgager, are primarily liable, personally liable, and the old mortgagor is secondarily liable as a surety, exactly what we have here, unless they get a novation or an express release. Now, if we take subject to, it flips. Subject to means the original mortgager is personally liable. The next mortgager is secondarily liable as a surety. Remember, surety just means you're liable if they don't pay. You're not personally liable, for instance, if there's a, what do we call it? A deficiency. Surety won't be liable for deficiency. Surety will just be liable for the actual payments. So I'm rocking with C here. C's get degrees. Excellent. Hard question, right? As the man paid an overdue installment, he acquired the right to seek reimbursement under suretyship. So let's just kind of tease this out a little bit. So expressly assume means new mortgagor is primarily, also known as personally, liable, right? And previous mortgagor is secondarily liable. Liable as a surety, right? And then subject to new mortgage or new mortgagor is secondarily liable surety, and previous mortgagor is primarily / personally liable. Everyone understand that?
No, in the chat.
Okay. Oh, the chat. Holy chat boxes. Whoa. I think that since he made the payments, then he's entitled to reimbursement. So C, great shot, Lisa. The Brazilian delegation. Oh no, Ariane is only Florida. She's not with you. Unless there's any Brazilians here. In MBEs, if a novation is needed, will it always be expressly stated? Yeah, novation will be stated as an express release. When he assumed expressly that didn't add a novation, how would the question look whether it was a novation? It's very much terminology. If they just say the words assumed or expressly assumed, that doesn't also entail novation. They would have to say expressly released. That's the word I'm looking for, a release, expressly released. A novation is a release. They could use the word novation or release, but those words would entail that there's no surety situation. Yeah, novations must be expressed. In my understanding, and there's some things in this life I'll never understand fully, but I understood that novations were in writing, but I do believe that there is an MBE question where the novation is not in writing and it still constitutes a proper novation because it's expressed and la-di-da-di-da. But like generally speaking, a good novation should be in writing. You'll never imply or assume a novation. Novation and assuming mortgage are two different things. That's correct. Confusing in my opinion. Yeah. Property is confusing in all opinions. To be released from assuming a mortgage, you need a novation. Yes, release and novation are the same. Thank you, smiley face. You're welcome. Okay, thank you for the clarification. No problem. All right, I'm just talking to myself now. Let's do another one. Un otro. Okay. Sorry.
But Andrew, is that question the person assuming the mortgage is not the person that is released from the novation? The question that said, but to be released from assuming a mortgage, you need a novation. It's not the same person.
Well, don't confuse the class, please. Just know that, and I don't mean to say that, but just everyone can be clear that a novation is a release of the parties. Expressly assuming is that you are going to become primarily liable and the old party is secondary liable. And then a subject to means you are going to take subject to as a surety and the original party will be primarily liable. I don't know exactly the question, but let's not be confused. All right, I'll go ahead and read this one so we can keep it moving. In such an action, the niece should recover. A landowner owned in fee simple lots 1 and 2 in an urban subdivision. The lots were vacant and unproductive. They were held as speculation that their value would increase. The landowner died and by his duly probated will devised the residue of his estate, of which lots 1 and 2 were part, to his sister for life, with remainder in fee simple to his niece. The landowner's executor distributed court order and notified the sister that future real estate taxes on lots 1 and 2 were her responsibility to pay. Except for the statutes relating to probate and those relating to real estate taxes, there is no applicable statute. The sister failed to pay real estate taxes due for lots 1 and 2. To prevent a tax sale of the fee simple, the niece paid the taxes and demanded that the sister reimburse her for the same. When the sister refused, the niece brought an appropriate action against the sister to recover for the amount paid. In such an action, the niece should recover the amount paid because the life tenant has a duty to pay current charges, the present value of the interest that the amount paid would earn during the sister's lifetime, nothing because the sister's sole possession gave the right to decide whether or not taxes should be paid, and nothing because the sister never received any income from the lots. And if anyone just joined us, we're doing a new polling thing. So please don't put the answer in the chat. The chat is for chatting. I'll scroll up so anyone can take a look at this and I'll load up this poll. All right, everyone ready to rock? Got your question, your answer locked in? Do. All right, we got a lot of A's. A's is in Andrew, A's is in Apple. We got a B. B is in basketball. Joanna says she can't see the poll, and it says that only 14. Oh no. Why can't you see the poll, Joanna? I cannot help you.
I don't know. I had it for the last 2 questions. It's not the first one. And it's gone again.
I don't know what to tell you because 72% of my classes participated. I
That's
wanna say-
okay. No worries.
I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
fine.
not an IT guy. You can call my friend Jason Lee. What up? What 17? All right, we got participation. A is being heavily picked. Can I hear from A? A delegation. I don't know if I like this polling thing. It makes everyone not.
If,
Go
if
ahead.
the land in the opening sentence, it says that the land is unproductive and vacant. So
Yeah.
you have, as a life estate holder, you have to pay those taxes upon it unless you're receiving some type of value from it being rented or you being occupying it.
Okay, I agree with everything you say. So everyone's like in A. Can someone else explain A? What are the duties of a life estate tenant? Can someone explain that to me that picked A? Because if you picked A, it's because you know the duties of a life estate tenant. What are they?
To pay the taxes and the interest on them, and then the remainder person is in charge of the principal.
And that's why you picked A, because they had to pay the taxes here, right? Because they're a life estate tenant. That's why everyone's picking A? Okay. What about B? Someone picked B. And I am not picking A for the record. So B and D, I want to hear from you. Why did someone pick B? I might be wrong, but I'm not picking A.
I chose B,
Okay.
but because I thought that a life tenant needs to pay interest when it's like in possession or like using the land, but clearly here he's not. So that's why I was so a little confused, but I just picked it because I saw interest.
And then who's my brave soldier who picked D? Was that a miss?
Yeah, Andrew.
Yes, let's hear
Yeah.
it. I can.
Yes. I select D, but I'm not sure. I believe it's a rule that maybe I'm wrong 100%, but I guess it's the D. Will be one of the rule that apply in this case, but I cannot explain and see. It's not making any sense. The D is the right one, but I guess it's the D.
I'm with you, man. I don't like your explanation, but I like your answer. I could be wrong here, but I'm rocking with D. Does anyone want to rock with me, or we're all going to think that I'm going to get this wrong and embarrass myself? I could be wrong, but this is my argument. Let me give you my argument that the life estate tenant does have the duty to pay taxes and to pay interest. That's if they're living on the property or collecting rent. Here it says they're vacant and unproductive, and they're only held as speculation that their value would increase. And that signifies to me that the life estate tenant is getting no use out of it. Why would the life estate tenant have to pay just so that the remainder man could get the value from it? I would pick D.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That is why you can't go with the thundering herd right there. Look, 10% of people got this right. Me and who was the person who picked D?
Yeah, me, Pablo.
Pablo, there you go, my man. Your explanation was not on point, but your answer was correct, and that's all that matters. See, look, I've been there. I'm not a genius. I've just learned from experience. These videos are pretty cool. I'm not going to play it for the sake of time, but I think you should watch these videos. Whenever I do Adapt-A-Bar or BarMax or whatever, and they have a little video like Adapt-A-Bob or Adapt-A-Jane, it's pretty fun to watch. The answer here is D, right? Since the land is vacant and unproductive, it's not generating any income to the sister. As a result, the exception to the general rule that the life tenant pays the taxes due on the property. That's the general rule. Only to the extent of rents received or the fair market value. In other words, if the life tenant is not occupying the property and not renting the property, then the future interest holder, upon coming into present possession of the property, will be unable to sue the former life tenant for unpaid taxes on the property. Did you all see how I explained it? And clearly I had to learn the hard way too, but this is how I explained it. You're a life estate tenant. You only have to pay the taxes and the interest on it because you're enjoying the property. You're either collecting rent from it or living there. If the only reason it was bought is for speculation and it's vacant and unproductive, then it's not fair that the life estate tenant is burdened by the life estate but gets no use out of it. Like, think about this. If I had an Uncle Sam, no, I don't want this too close. I would never say Uncle Jake, no. Uncle Robert, right? I have an Uncle Robert, and Robert leaves me a piece of crusty land in Idaho that has absolutely no use, right? And I have to pay taxes and interest on it. And then when I die, someone else gets it. Would I be like, hey, thank you, Uncle Robert. That's a great gift you gave me. You gave me the burden of having to pay taxes and interest, but I don't get to use the property. In that sense, you didn't really give me anything. So does everyone kind of understand why this particular situation, it would be no duty to pay taxes? Right? Since the land is vacant, unproductive, it's not generating any income. As a result, sister qualifies for an exception to the general rule that the life tenant pays taxes due on real property. So I'll make this very easy for people. The rule is tenant pays taxes and interest on mortgage. Remainder man pays mortgage principal. Everyone understand what the mortgage, what the principal versus the interest means? Principal is the amount you borrowed, interest is the amount the bank is making on top of it. It's why the banks are rich and we're not, because they're collecting a lot of interest. Okay, so here's the exception is when property is vacant and unproductive, no use or income from land, then remainder men must pay taxes and interest. Because life estate holder gets no use. We're good? Everyone cool with this question? Hard question, literally. 10% of people got it right in the state, 14 overall. And the 10% and 14% of people who got it right are people like me who got it wrong before, trust me. No one got this wrong on their first go. You had to learn it from the question. All right. A land, wait, don't leave. What's the number? Sorry. A landowner orally gave his neighbor permission to share the use of a private road on the landowner's land so the neighbor could have more convenient access to the neighbor's land. Only the landowner maintained the road. After the neighbor had used the road on a daily basis for 3 years, the landowner conveyed his land to a grantee who immediately notified the neighbor that the neighbor is not to use the road. The neighbor sued the grantee, seeking a declaration that the neighbor had a right to continue to use the road. Who is likely to prevail? The grantee, because an oral license is invalid. The grantee, because the neighbor had a license that the grantee could terminate at any time. The neighbor, because the grantee is a stop from terminating the neighbor's use of the road. The neighbor, because the neighbor's use of the road was open and notorious when the grantee purchased the land. So everyone can take a minute. I'll load up the poll. Now I like the poll thing. Gives me a chance. I hope everyone is also keeping note of like how many they got right and wrong then. Are we ready for all this jelly? This poll is brought to you by my neighbor, Adrian Acosta, landlord tenant. Do you want to sue your landlord? Adrian is your man. So mostly B's in the trap. I believe in B too. I think heavy B. This does seem like a license. I think I've gotten this question wrong before, either on my adaptive or with a student, because it does seem like an implied easement. So I could see, you know, thinking that it's an implied easement, but it's not. It's a license. It's oral. There's nothing that ties it to the land. And only the landowner maintained the road. That's the key piece. Does everyone notice that? That's a very important piece. If the neighbor had, you know, maintained it, then that might give rise to some implication. But here, it's just a license to ill. License to ill. A license is a permission to use the land of another. It is revocable and not subject to the statute of frauds. In this case, because the neighbor had the landowner's permission to use the road, did not expend any money, property, or labor pursuant to the agreement, the neighbor had a license that was effectively revoked. So let's talk about some characteristics of a license. A license is revocable. I always think about it like a ticket to a hockey game. And the Panthers almost did it last night. So license is revocable, does not need to be in writing. And if a person has the oral right to cross over land, but has permission, so it's not adverse / prescriptive. And does not make any improvements. Or does not do any maintenance, let's say. It is a license and not an easement. I could see people, including myself, thinking this was an easement. Yeah, see, I sandwiched an easement in between thinking it was a license. So just know this is all practice, repetition. I'm about to do a poll. You guys want to do this question or not? Should we do it? Or should we skip it? Hector's saying, so if he had made improvements or maintained the road, would the neighbor been able to keep the license? Then there would have been an argument that maybe it was an easement, but that would be a different question. All right, Grace, you said we want to do it, so let's do it. An investor purchased attractive commercial land, financing a large part of the purchase price with a loan from a business partner that was secured by a mortgage. The investor made the installment payments on the mortgage regular years. Then the investor persuaded a neighbor to buy the land subject to the mortgage to his partner. They expressly agreed that the neighbor would not assume and agree to pay the investor's debt to the partner. The investor's mortgage to the partner contained a due on sale clause stating, if mortgagor transfers his or her interest without the written consent of mortgagee first obtained, then at mortgagee's option, the entire principal balance of the debt secured by the mortgage shall become immediately due and payable. However, without seeking his partner's consent, the investor conveyed the land to the neighbor, the deed stating that it was subject to a mortgage to the partner, and giving details and recording data related to the mortgage. The neighbor took possession of the land and made several mortgage payments, which the partner accepted. Now, however, neither the neighbor nor the investor has made the last 3 mortgage payments. The partner has sued the neighbor for the amount of delinquent payments. In this action, for whom should the court render judgment? The neighbor, because she did not assume and agree to pay the investor's mortgage debt. The neighbor, because she is not in privity of estate with the partner. The partner, because the investor's deed to the neighbor violated the due on sale clause. Or the partner, because the neighbor is in privity of estate with the partner. All right, let's see what we got. Can everyone see everyone else's answers or not? Oh, you guys have no idea what oh, that's cool. See, I can see them as they're coming in. So far, we have 9 of 22 participation. I gotta get 75% participation.
Andrew, if you click the 3 lines to the left of the P next to practice questions, you'll be able to like see more. It'll get rid. Yeah, it helps a little.
Sweet. I got 54% participation.
Andrew, they are asking to see D.
All right, we have 63%, so I still need some more participation. 68%. 72%, one more vote and we can talk. 16 votes, one more vote. All right, well. That's what we're gonna max out at, 72% participation. All right, most people are picking A, and then C is in second, and one person picked B. Can I hear from someone from the A delegation about why A might be the right answer?
Because he expressed assumed it.
Say that again?
I said because he expressly, they made the agreement, they expressly agreed that the neighbor wouldn't assume to pay the investor debt to the partner.
Okay. Anyone have any other thoughts or agree with that?
Yeah, also, when it's a subject to, the purchaser is not personally liable.
But even like aside from that, it's the fact that the partner accepted these payments because there was a due on sale. I'm not sure what it has to do, but I know that could have tricked people off.
Well, a lot of people
I
picked
know.
C. Let's hear it from C. I love the people who picked A after I told everyone that everyone else picked A. You are interesting. What's C? Anyone want to argue for C? 4 people picked C.
I don't think it's C because I think the bank, I mean, the person that lent the money, waived that condition
Yeah,
By
that's what I was trying to
accepting-
say.
by accepting the payments, yeah.
We're like an A. Anyone like B? There's 2 people who picked B. Anyone want to speak for B? I would go with A here too. This is kind of a tough question. Yeah. A is correct. The explicit agreement that the neighbor would not assume liability for the mortgage insulated the neighbor from liability on the mortgage payments, even though she did make several payments voluntarily. The partner may end up foreclosing, but the partner does not have an actual claim against the neighbor, only against the investor for the entire balance of the mortgage. Privity is not an issue in this question because the neighbor did not assume the mortgage. The investor's violation of the clause only gives the partner the right to demand immediate payment from the investor, not the neighbor. As stated above, privity is irrelevant because the neighbor did not assume the mortgage. So they go heavily into talking about mortgages here. A is correct. The fact that the investor and the neighbor expressly agreed that the neighbor would not assume and agree to pay the investor's debt to the partner. The neighbor therefore did not assume the mortgage, which means she has no personal liability with regards to the mortgage payments. Even though the neighbor voluntarily made payments for a few months, she was under no contractual obligation to do so. So we didn't really talk about that, but that's where they're trying to trick us. You didn't have the obligation to make payments, but you have been making them. Does that stop you from denying liability? And the answer is no. When the investor conveyed the tract of land to the neighbor without first obtaining written consent, this gave the partner the right to demand immediate payment of the entire outstanding from the balance from the investor, not the neighbor. However, the neighbor may still lose the property if the partner exercises the right to foreclose in the event that payments are not made by anyone. C is incorrect. The call to question asks who judgment should be in the suit by the partner against the neighbor, not the investor. The partner may have an immediate actionable demand against the investor for the full balance of the mortgage for violating the due on sale clause, but the issue here is whether the partner can recover from the neighbor. As explained above, the partner may not hold the neighbor liable because she did not assume the mortgage and the rights are unaffected by a due on sales clause. So we can learn from this. If you do not expressly assume a mortgage, you are not personally liable for the mortgage payments, even if you have been making them. Tough question. In the nature of time and equity, let's move forward. Okay, my favorite thing. Can someone, Joanna, you're here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you read this question while I load the poll up?
Sure. Okay, is the buyer correct? A seller contracted to sell two of them, hold on, now I have the poll in front of me. Wait.
Sorry.
Okay, a seller contracted to sell land to a buyer for 300,000. The contract provided that the closing will be 60 days after the contract was signed and that the seller will convey to the buyer a marketable title by a quitclaim deed at closing. The contract contained no other provisions regarding the title to be delivered to the buyer. A title search revealed that the land was subject to an unsatisfied $50,000 mortgage and a right-of-way easement over a portion of the land. The buyer now claims that the title is unmarketable and has refused to close. Is the buyer correct? A, no, because nothing under these facts renders title unmarketable. B, no, because the buyer agreed to accept a quitclaim deed. C, yes, because the right-of-way easement makes the title unmarketable. D, yes, because the unsatisfied mortgage makes the title unmarketable.
Take a second. All right. Oh, we have a whole lot of mixture here. 60% participation. Someone's saying a due on sale clause. That just means that you can have a stipulation in a mortgage where if you sell the property, then you have to pay off the entire mortgage. And that's just a fair and equitable. As long as it's fair and equitable, that's a fine stipulation of a mortgage. It's called due on sales clause. All right, I'm going to show these results because I think these results are intriguing. Can everyone see the results? Everyone can see these?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, let's dissect these results and create a what are those things called? Or do they have a probability they could be wrong? Okay, so a lot of people, I guess B is the most common answer. Who wants to argue for B?
I can.
Okay,
It's a quitclaim deed, so it doesn't promise anything, but I'm sure people are confused just because it said marketable title. Like that he promised the seller would convey marketable title, so then it could confuse, so it might be wrong, but that's why I chose B.
okay. Well, that's fair. What about people who chose A, C, or D?
Yeah, I chose C. But that's because marketable title, regardless if it's a quitclaim deed or not, a marketable title will mean that it's free from being challenged. But over here, the first provision, which will be the unsatisfied mortgage, that will be paid with the 300,000. But the right of way, I think it's a problem because it's an easement, and that can be taken to court if it's not fair.
Okay. Anyone want to argue for any of the others, A or D?
I picked A. I don't know if I'm probably wrong since I know one picked A, but I didn't think that the mortgage or an easement made a title unmarketable, but I might be wrong.
Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
I was between B or D. I chose D, but
And
could be
why?
B. Why?
Yeah.
Because even though the person just agreed to a quitclaim deed, it also expressly said marketable title, so that's why I chose D.
I like what Iona just rebutted that with. You can pay a mortgage off at closing to make it marketable, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. So then that wouldn't make it marketable because 50,000, you're about to have 300. You're gonna have 250 left.
Yeah, that's true.
I would eliminate D. Nothing
It's
facts makes it unmarketable. Well, let's talk about C. Does that make it unmarketable? The right of way
Yeah.
easement?
Yes.
You
So we
said
can
it's an
eliminate
easement.
A, right? I would eliminate A because I'm saying the question isn't whether like that's a known fact that an easement over land makes it unmarketable, right?
Is marketable title implied in every Like in every deed, even a quitclaim deed?
Well, if you knew the answer to that, you would know the answer to this question, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's why I think it is C then.
It's what?
I would switch it to C.
C isn't. Why? Yes, you can disclaim marketable title. And in my opinion, I don't necessarily agree with the statement that you still have an obligation to give marketable title even with a quitclaim deed. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. What I do believe is true is that if you agreed to convey marketable title, you probably got to convey marketable title. I'm reading this as a reading comprehension question. You literally signed a contract agreeing to convey marketable title. There's a right-of-way easement on it. So even though it is a quitclaim deed, which I think normally, if they didn't have this statement, I think the answer would be B. But because of this statement, I think the answer is C. Let's see what the message is saying. Can you look at it in contract mode? What does that mean?
Like expressly promising something.
Yeah, exactly. To me, it's an express term of the contract. You said there would be marketable title, and there's an easement on it. I'm going with C, but I could be wrong.
It is C.
All right. An easement may render a title unmarketable, especially with a type that would benefit a neighbor rather than a property owner. Here, the proceeds of the sale would satisfy the mortgage. However, the right-of-way easement renders the title unmarketable. Although a quitclaim deed only gives title to whatever the owner actually owns, the owner's promise to deliver marketable title means the buyer can refuse to close. So that is true. I don't think quitclaim deeds do not negate the implied covenant to provide marketable title. Every land sale contract has implied covenant marketable title. Okay, so actually, Paul was correct that marketable title is implied even in a quitclaim deed. But I think you can specifically disclaim marketable title, which happens a lot in quitclaim deeds. So that's the fine line there, is that at its core, a quitclaim deed still has an implied warranty of marketable title, but a lot of quitclaim deeds maybe as is, or there's no marketable title. So I understand she definitely understands why. Let's see the extendo. See, look, practice. Real estate contracts require the seller to convey a marketable, also known as merchantable title. If the contract is silent on the issue of what kind of title that is to be conveyed, the obligation to convey a marketable title will be implied in the contract. Marketable title is free from reasonable doubt as to both matters of law and in fact, and a reasonable purchaser will be willing to accept it readily. Parties can contract for something less than marketable title. Quitclaim deeds transfer whatever title the grantor has to the grantee, even if that title is unmarketable. However, unless the party specifically contracted this type of conveyance, there would be an obligation to convey a marketable title. Literally, this contradicts what they say up here, right? Because they're saying quitclaim deeds transfer whatever title the grantor has, even if that title is unmarketable. That's what I thought. So we'll kind of have to look into that later. There's a variety of defects that may make a title unmarketable. Defects in the chain of title refer to any defect that indicates the vendor does not have full interest in what he purports to convey. Encumbrances such as mortgages, liens, easements, use restrictions, encroachments, or land use and zoning violations can also make a title unmarketable. After the closing, the deed typically replaces the real estate contract as the embodiment of the parties' relationship. Under the doctrine of merger, most obligations imposed by the contract of sale are discharged unless they are repeated by the deed. For example, if a purchaser contracted for merchantable title but accepts a quitclaim deed, the purchaser would not be able to sue on the contractual provisions if the title turns out to be defective. The purchaser in this scenario would be limited to provisions of the deed. Thus, real estate contracts are only relevant during the gap between its signing and the delivery of the deed. Okay, that's interesting. So that kind of clarifies things. The contract has to be marketable title if you're claiming under the contract, even if it's as a quitclaim deed. But once you've recorded the quitclaim deed, then there's no claim because the deed's been recorded. So remember, merger contract claims are different than deed claims. There's no deed claim for unmarketable title once the deed's been recorded, but there still may be a contract claim for not delivering marketable title. So C is correct. Marketable title is title reasonably free from doubt, which generally means unencumbered fee simple with good record title. An easement may render title unmarketable, especially with a type that would benefit a neighbor rather than property owner. Here, the right-of-way easement would render the title unmarketable. Although the quitclaim deed only gives title to what the owner actually owns, the owner's promise to deliver marketable title means the buyer can refuse to close because this property does not have marketable title. B is incorrect. Here, hopefully this explains what the discrepancy we're having is. Quitclaim deeds still require an implied covenant to provide marketable title unless it is waived in the contract. Quitclaim deeds do not negate the implied covenant to provide marketable title. Every land sale contract has an implied covenant of marketable title. Further, the seller specifically promised to deliver marketable title to the buyer. Although the quitclaim deed only gives title to what the owner actually owns, the owner's promise to deliver marketable title means the buyer can refuse to close. So I have a whole bunch of questions here. Does every easement make title unmarketable? Yes, unless they expressly say, we recognize this easement and we're still cool with it. But an easement is definitely a encumbrance. Mortgages, liens, easements, use restrictions, encroachments, land use and zoning restrictions, even threats of potential litigation on the property will make it unmarketable. Problem, if you disclaim marketable title, no person will buy it. So it has to be consented to by both parties as an unmarketable title. Otherwise, marketable is assumed. Yeah, Paul's absolutely correct on this. Marketable title is assumed in every land sale, period, even if it's a quitclaim deed. Now, quitclaim deeds are only giving the person everything that you own. So once the deed's been recorded, you can't sue on the deed for failure to deliver marketable title. But before that point, during the contract period, there's certainly a claim for lack of marketable title. So again, let's look through the forest and try to see the trees here. Let's just pick out a couple of trees. One of the trees.
I have a quick question.
Can you just table that for 1 second so I can just put some trees down? Okay. The trees here for this question is that marketable title means free of encumbrances, which means no easements, no mortgages, what do we say? No weird zoning restrictions, right? Like if it's just zoned for commercial and you thought it was zoned for residential, that's not unmarketable. If it's like a weird zoning restriction, that would be unmarketable. If it was acquired by adverse possession, I've seen that as unmarketable. If there's threats of litigation on the property. What did they say right here?
Lien.
Mortgages, liens, yeah, liens, use restrictions or encroachments. So, sorry. Liens, use restrictions, encroachments. And then we say all lands sale contracts have implied covenant of marketable title, although this can be expressly waived, right? Further, if you deliver a quitclaim deed and agree to marketable title, there must be marketable title. And then finally, a quitclaim deed is just a deed to convey all that one owns, even if it's unmarketable, but they can still be sued for unmarketable title before the contract merges with the deed. All right, someone with the black square, I didn't even know who was talking. Was I gonna ask me a question? I just want to get all those trees down, but what was the question?
Oh, that was me. I got the right answer, but I was looking at it more, it's just like the contract, because it said quitclaim deed, and then it also had, you know, an express statement. I was like, well, that's ambiguous. So you would have to go with the express statement. So I kind of looked at it that way because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
wrong?
I agree with what you said. You already stated it, that just look at through the lens of contracts. If there's an express statement, that's going to prevail. Express statements agreed to in contract are usually going to prevail because you can waive something. I can agree to sell you my house, but I'm making a warranty that there's a hole in the wall because I got mad at the Panthers last night. You know, like, that's okay. You're allowed to have express warranties. So does every easement title marketable? Yes. You almost have to know the difference between general warranty deed, special warranty, and quitclaim deed to get this concept, how they operate. I bet people thought because it wasn't general and just a quitclaim, that would change their views. Sure, but we understand all these things. Again, we got some points down on our cram guide. We're moving, we're grooving. Let's keep it up. All right. A man borrowed $500,000 from a bank, securing the loan with a mortgage on a commercial building he owned. The mortgage provided as follows. No prepayment may be made on this loan during the first 2 years after the date of the mortgage. Thereafter, prepayment may be made in any amount at any time, but only if accompanied by a prepayment fee of 5% of the amount prepaid. 1 year later, the man received an unexpected cash gift of $1 million and wished to pay off the $495 principal balance still owed on the loan. Concerned that the bank might refuse prepayment despite a rise in market interest rates in the year since the loan was made, or at least insist on the 5% prepayment fee, the man consulted an attorney concerning the enforceability of the above quoted clause. So that's all it is. This clause, what is the attorney likely to say about this clause? The entire clause is unenforceable because it violates public policy favoring the prompt and early repayment of debt. The entire clause is unenforceable because the rise in interest rates will allow the bank to reloan the fund without loss. The 2-year prepayment prohibition and the prepayment fee are both valid and enforceable. The 2-year prepayment prohibition is unenforceable, but the prepayment fee provision is enforceable. All right, let me load up this poll. All right, you ready? You are the weakest link. No, that's true. Goodbye. Man, people were ready to jump at this one. We got 47% participation, 52%, 56%. I'm looking for 75% participation. Literally nobody knows what answer you pick, so you should do yourself justice and answer every question so you could grade yourself, and then you can tell me how you're doing and I can tell you what the vibes are. One more voter, let's see. One more voter. Yeah, participate to make me happy, one more person. All right, beautiful, thank you. These are the results, so it's pretty split. Anyone want to argue for A? Anyone want to argue for C?
I'll be honest, I've done this question recently, so I do know the right answer, but no, I want to explain something. So I learned.
You can't. I don't like
Okay,
that. I'm
then I
sorry.
won't.
Just wait till the end. I just don't want people to answer the question to explain. Like, that's not fair. Just wait till the end and we'll talk about it. All right. Paul, what are you saying? I think because it seems like a clause in a contract, I don't see anything violating it. All right. I like Paul's answer. Anyone explain for D? What's up, Scarlett?
So I thought that for D, the 2-year provision, it's not like the equitable thing to do for paying off the whole entire loan, but with the fee, I know that there is fees for on mortgages. Like if you pay a mortgage early, you do get hit with the 5% fee so that the bank is able to collect some interest. But I don't think that 2-year provision of like not being able to pay off the loan, I think that might be, I don't know if unconscionable is the word, but I just don't think it's like equitable.
Okay.
So that's why I picked D.
And was it you, Lexi, that was asking the question? That was snapping it. Was it you, Lexi?
Yeah.
Now you can speak. I just, come on. Like, all right. Now what's your question though? What's your thought?
When I first did this question, I thought it would be something, but it makes so much more sense even when Scarlett was talking about the bank isn't getting all what they should be getting. Cause I thought at first like, oh, A sounds good because why can't you pay off your loans early? But then they're like losing out on all of the interest that they can be getting. So then that's why I picked C.
Yeah, the answer is definitely C here, and it's literally exactly what Paul said. This is a contract, and it's equitable. And why would the bank not want you to pay it off early? And why would the bank not have to give you a fee if you do pay it off earlier than like? Why would they want to make it so you can't pay it off in 2 years, and then if you do pay it off early, you have to pay a fee? Because if you haven't learned this yet about life, they are holding you down and they are taking your money and they are making it as bad as possible. If you walk into the bank and think those are your friends in there, they're not. They're going to create a deal that gives you what you need now, self gratification, so that they can stick it to you for the rest of your life. And if you come up with a windfall, even though, oh, wait, I could pay you the money back, bank. Don't you want it? No, we don't want that money back. We want you to pay it back slowly over time so we can get all the interest that we wanted. But what about equitable redemption? This is not a foreclosure. I don't know what that would have to do with this. Banks are the devil, Paul was saying. I don't know. I wouldn't say devil, but I'm just saying they're not there to help you. They're there to pay themselves. And this is a reasonable prohibition and prepayment fee that is a clause that they made to protect their interests, and they will enforce it. Does that make them the devil? No. Does that make them an actor in late stage capitalism? Absolutely. All right. Mortgage agreements may dictate prohibitions on prepayment and prepayment fees. They're valid and enforceable. That's all we got to talk about. Mortgage agreements may dictate prohibitions on prepayment and prepayment fees. Mortgages may dictate conditions on prepayment terms, no payment for 2 years, and on payment fees, prepayment fees, 2% fee if paid early. Your questions, Charlotte?
No, I think I just didn't put my hand down. I'm sorry.
Oh. Put your hands up in the air. All right, let's keep it moving. That's why I always tell people that real estate and contracts are the same subject. A lot of times you'll be like, wait a minute. If this was a contract and the bank, I signed a contract with the bank and there was a provision in it, would I have to follow it? Yeah, you would. All right. 6 months ago, a man told his cousin that he would give her his farm as a gift on her next birthday. The cousin then entered into a valid written contract to sell the farm to an investor with a closing to take place 1 week after the cousin's next birthday. The man failed to convey the farm to the cousin on her birthday. 1 week after the cousin's birthday, on the intended closing date, the investor first learned of the cousin's inability to convey the farm because the man had breached his promise. The investor considered suing the cousin, but realized that she could not compel the cousin to convey the farm because it was still owned by the man. 2 weeks after the cousin's birthday, the man died. Under his valid will, the man devised the farm to the cousin. Within a week, the executor of the man's estate gave the cousin an executor's deed in the farm in compliance with state law. The investor promptly learned of the transfer and demanded that the cousin convey the farm to her. The cousin refused. The investor sued the cousin for specific performance. Who will likely prevail? The cousin, because the contract to convey was not signed by the legal owner of the farm as the date of the contract and was therefore void. The cousin, because she received title by devise rather than by conveyance. The investor, because the contract to convey merged into the executor's deed to the cousin. The investor, because the contract to convey remained enforceable by her within a reasonable period of time after the proposed closing date. Let me pull my poll up. All right, what do we think here?
Wait, I'm still reading.
I know, just showing up. You got 31% participation. Nicole, I don't know. Whatever you wrote. Yeah, just do it because I want to get 75%. All right, 68%, 72%. Can I get one more vote? And we'll check the results out. One more vote. Perfect. All right, it looks like C is in the lead. A and D are very close behind, and B has a vote. Now we know that Nicole knows the answer, so please, Nicole, step away from participation, please. All right, anyone want to argue for A, B, C, or D? Estoppel by deed for C. This is what someone's saying. Anything else?
I think that the closing date passed, so 2 weeks later, the person died. It devised the property, and that's it.
So what answer did you pick?
I chose A.
Okay. Any D's out there? You might have a D in me.
I was gonna
Sorry.
pick D. I was gonna pick D, I just couldn't, but I think because the investor learned the date of the closing, there's still reasonable period of time after the closing date for the investor to get entitled to the property. And the contract was still enforceable at that time, even after the man's death.
Okay.
I might be wrong, but
Well, it also adding to her explanation, it doesn't say time is of the essence, so maybe I was wrong.
So what would you pick now, Grace?
D.
I'll go D too. Anyone pick C? Want to argue because C's the majority vote here, but I'm on team D. Not Nicole. No offense, but she knows. Any C's turn?
I guess I would say that the person's interest vested when the person died.
Why is it not C? Does anyone have an argument against C and an argument against D? I kind of like what Grace finally said. Time is not of the essence here, right? So 2 weeks after they died, he devised the farm within a week. So they said closing to take place 1 week after the cousin's next birthday. It didn't take place then. Now we're 2 weeks later. I would go with D here. I have 3 friends. See. Yeah. See, look, I finally got this one right. I've gotten this one wrong twice before. Finally got this one right. Tough question. D is correct. The valid land sale contract between the cousin and the investor contained no times of the essence clause. And without this provision, the default rule entitles the parties to a reasonable postponement of the closing date. When the cousin acquired the land, less than 2 weeks had passed since the closing date, which was a reasonable time period of postponement. C is correct. C is incorrect. The contract between the cousin and the investor does not merge with the executor's deed to the cousin, although the investor still has the right to specific performance under the contract. C is incorrect. It reaches it by the wrong, it misapplies the merger doctrine. The investor will prevail, but not because the cousin investor contract merged with the executor's deed to the cousin. Although a land sale contract is typically replaced by the deed under the doctrine of merger, here, the executor's deed to the cousin had no effect on the contract because between the cousin and the investor. Nevertheless, the investor had a specific performance as explained above. So, right, C was throwing us off because that contract wouldn't have merged into the deed. It would have been a contract between the investor and the exec and the not the cousin, who's the original person. A man, right? That would be the estate of the man and the investor. Their contract would emerge to the deed, not the contract between the cousin and the man or the investor. So the takeaway from this one, really, honestly, let's make it simple. If time of the essence is not stated in a land sale contract, 2 weeks past the closing date is still a reasonable time to enforce the contract. All right, for time's sake, I want to get through more questions, so we'll kind of move at a more rapid rate, but let's keep it going. All right, a couple's in the process of purchasing a newly built home. The couple has a real estate agent and an attorney helping them through the process. The couple's agent recommended a particular bank for them to use in securing a mortgage for the home. Following the agent's advice, the couple went to the bank without their attorney. At the bank, a bank employee began preparing the documents for the couple's mortgage. The employee is also charging the couple a fee for preparing the documents. May the bank employee properly draft the mortgage documents? No, because the couple's attorney must be present. No, because the bank's employee may not charge a fee for preparing the documents. Yes, because the employee is not engaged in the practice of law. Yes, because the couple waived the right to have an attorney present. So let me pull this up. All right, let's see what we think. We got heavy C's here, right? They're not engaged in the practice of law. They're just drawing up documents. We're good with that? Anyone struggle with this question? It's not practice of law. Okay. A woman owned land subject to a mortgage held by a bank. She fell behind in her mortgage loan payments and the bank properly initiated foreclosure proceedings. The land was sold at a foreclosure sale that resulted in surplus proceeds to which the woman was entitled. Before payment of the surplus proceeds to her, she died tested. In her duly probated will, which she had executed before granting the mortgage to the bank, the woman specifically devised her land to a charity. The remainder of the woman's estate was given by will to her brother, her sole heir. A dispute has arisen in the administration of the woman's estate about the foreclosure sale surplus proceeds. The woman's brother contends that he is now entitled to those proceeds. Is the brother correct? No, because the foreclosure sale was an involuntary act. No, because the woman's will clearly indicated her intent for the charity to have the land. Yes, because the foreclosure sale was completed before the woman's death. Yes, because the woman's will was written before the mortgage was granted. Take a second. See what we got. %59 participation. Any more votes before we lock it in? 63, 68. Last call. 72, 77. Nice. All right. Wow. Deadlock between B and C. Who wants to argue for the B delegation? Nobody?
I could try to argue for B.
Let's hear it.
I chose B because originally the land would have gone to the charity, but since the land was foreclosed upon and there was proceedings from that land, that would go to the charity in substitution for the land itself. That's why I chose.
Anyone want to argue for C?
Yeah, this is a specific device. And it was abated because whenever the person died, that wasn't in her estate anymore. So then if it's not there and it's abated, it goes to the residue, which will follow the will.
Ooh, what was the word you just used?
The abatement,
I think you're right, but with the wrong word. What's another
I
word?
was thinking
Lapse.
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 I don't think lapse or abatement. But we're in the right world of words.
Oh, you mean extinguished, because property wasn't there.
There we go, Paul. Ademption, deemed, right? This has not been abated, it's been deemed. Abatement is a diminution in the price, like there's not as much money in the bank. Ademption is extinguished, it no longer exists. Yeah, lapse is a different thing, but I don't think it's lapsed. I think it's been deemed, and therefore, sorry, Charlie, like you wanted the land, right? She specifically devised the land to the charity. Well, that devise no longer exists. So I'll go C. You like C? It's deadlock at B and C. Yeah, it's gonna be redemption. Yeah, redemption. It's redemption. That's what we're looking at. Here before the death, they lost her interest. Thus, at the time of her death, she only had an interest in surplus proceeds. I think I choked on an apple, which was a personal property that passed to her brother, who was the woman's residuary legatee. So what can we say here? If a will has a specific devise, and let's say it's college property, and that property is sold or extinguished, it has been deemed, and the person no longer receives the property. When we do wills, there's certain situations where this might not be the case. Like if you have an account and you sell the Apple stock to buy Microsoft stock, but it's kind of like in the will that account will, then maybe that would be different. But if it's talking about specific property, or if it specifically says the Microsoft shares, then this would be the concept of redemption. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's try this one. A banker owned Whiteacre, a dwelling house situated on a 2-acre lot in acre zone for single family residential use only. Although it was not discernible from the outside, Whiteacre had been converted by the banker from a single family house to a structure that contained 3 separate apartments in violation of the zoning ordinance. Further, the conversion was in violation of the building code. The banker and employee entered into a valid written contract for the purchase and sale of Whiteacre. The contract provided that the banker was to convey to the employee a marketable title. The contract was silent as to zoning. The employee had fully inspected Whiteacre. Prior to the closing, the employee learned that Whiteacre did not conform to the zoning ordinance and refused to close even though the banker was ready, willing, and able to perform his contractual obligations. The banker brought an appropriate action for specific performance against the employee. In the action, the banker should win because the banker was able to convey marketable title, win because the employee was charged with knowledge of the zoning ordinance prior to entering into the contract, lose because the illegal conversion of Whiteacre creates a risk of litigation, lose because the illegal conversion of Whiteacre was done by the banker rather than by a predecessor. Okay. Let's see. Omar going through his morning walk. I want to know what the steps are on your phone. How many steps you take a day?
1,100,
Solid.
actually 11,000, sorry, missed
Yeah,
it.
11,000. I'm pretty much similar. I walk a lot too. We got 8 votes in. 9 votes, 10 votes. And let's pull a little bit earlier. Everyone's picking C. We like C. B, because the employee was chartered with knowledge of zoning ordinance, so it said it had been converted by a banker that violated, and we think this risk of litigation is unmarketable title. I agree. We've already talked about that, right? Risk of litigation is unmarketable title. I know property is tough, but it hasn't been super bad. All right, let's talk about. I'm hunting rabbits. 25 years ago, a seller conveyed Blackacre to a buyer by warranty deed. The seller at the time also executed and delivered an instrument in the proper form of a deed, purporting to convey Whiteacre to the buyer. The seller thought she had title to Whiteacre, but did not. Therefore, no title passed by virtue of the Whiteacre deed. Whiteacre consisted of 3 acres of brush land adjoining the west boundary of Blackacre. The buyer has occasionally hunted rabbits on Whiteacre, but less often than annually. No one else came on Whiteacre except occasional rabbit hunters. 20 years ago, the buyer planted a row of evergreens in the vicinity of the opposite boundary of Blackacre and erected a fence just beyond the evergreens to the east. In fact, both the trees and the fence were placed on Greenacre, owned by a neighbor, which was bordered the east boundary of Blackacre. The buyer was unsure of the exact boundary and placed the trees and the fence in order to establish his rights on the fence. The fence is located 10 feet within Greenacre. Now the buyer has had his property surveyed and the title checked and has learned the facts. The period of time to acquire title by adverse possession is 15 years. The buyer consulted his lawyer, who properly advised that in appropriate action, the buyer would probably be able to obtain title to Whiteacre, but not the 10-foot strip of Greenacre, the 10-foot strip of Greenacre, but not Whiteacre, both Whiteacre and the 10-foot strip of Greenacre, neither Whiteacre. So got a whole lot of acres. Black, white, green. The last one says neither strip, just so you can see. All right, let's see what we got. You got 45% participation with the chessing. Also, having a zoning ordinance isn't unmarkable or violating it is. Yeah. Just because, you know, a property zoned for residential is unmarketable. If it's a normal zoning ordinance, but if it's like something weird, like you can't build a normal thing here, then that would be unmarketable. All right, 59%. We see most people are picking B. Anyone want to argue for B or C?
I could for B, because the facts say that the person hunted there, but less than annually, and other people also hunted, so it wasn't exclusive.
I agree with you. Now, why? What's up with Greenacre, the 10-foot strip though? Why can we get that?
Because the person encroached with the fence for 10 years, adverse possession.
For
It
20
wasn't
years.
10 years. Oh, 20 years.
And it only had to be 15 years. So I agree with you. Yeah. So if we look at the Quram guide, we can say this. Adverse possession must be exclusive and continuous. Occasionally hunting rabbits. Occasionally be very, very quiet. Hunting rabbits. And while other people also hunt rabbits, will not satisfy conditions of adverse possession. Cool, cool. Let's keep it moving. Chat. Looney Tunes references today. Oh yeah, I used to love Looney Tunes. Big Looney Tunes. What is life if it's not loony, right? 6 years ago, a landlord and a tenant entered into a 10-year commercial lease of land. The written lease provided that if a public entity under the power of eminent domain condemned any part of the land, but not all of it, the lease would terminate and the landlord would receive the entire condemnation award. Thereafter, the city condemned approximately 2/3 of the land. The tenant notified the city that the landlord that an independent appraisal of the value of the tenant's possessory interest established that substantially exceeded the tenant's obligations under the lease and that the tenant was entitled to share the award. The appraisal was accurate. An appropriate action among the landlord, the tenant, and the city as to the right of the tenant to a portion of the condemnation award, for whom will the court likely find? The landlord, because the condemnation superseded and canceled the lease. The landlord, because the parties specifically agreed as to the consequences of a partial condemnation. The tenant, because the landlord breached the landlord's implied warranty of quiet enjoyment. The tenant, because otherwise the landlord would be unjustly Let's launch the poll. Hi, my name is Andrew. You may remember me from such bar prep courses as the UBE and the MBE. Anyone get that reference? Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me. All right, everyone is picking B, right? Why? They explicitly agreed to this. This is reinforcing the idea that real property is contract law. They literally agreed to this. They said if they were condemned part of it, but not any, then they would terminate it and the landlord would get the entire award. So that's literally what they agreed upon. All right, I'm Troy McClure. I think we can skip to the next one without any understanding. All right, real against perpetuities. We said we would do it. Let's do it. 60 years ago, by a properly executed and recorded deed, a father conveyed Greenacre, a tract of land, to my son for life, then to my son's widow for life, then to my son's child or children in equal shares. At the time, the son was 6 years old. So if it's a rap question, that's probably the measuring life. Shortly thereafter, the father died tested, meaning tested with the will. His son was the only heir at law. The father's will left his entire estate to a local church. Okay, but this tract of land is conveyed. 25 years ago, when he was 41, the son married his first wife, who was then 20 years old. Jeez. They had one child. The first wife and the child were killed in an automobile accident 3 years ago when the child was 21. So the son's widow for life, but the son didn't have a widow. The child died tested, leaving his entire estate to charity. The father was the child's sole heir at law. 2 years ago, the son remarried. This year, the son died tested, survived only by his widow, to whom he left his entire estate. The common rule against perpetuities is unchanged by statute in this jurisdiction. In an appropriate action to determine the ownership of Greenacre, the court should find that title is invested in whom. It's a very hard question. It's going to take us a little bit. A, the church, because the son's widow was unborn at the time of conveyance, and hence the remainder violated rap. The widow, because her life estate and inheritance from the son, who was the father's sole heir at law and who was a child's sole heir at law, merged the entitled title to her. The charity, because the child had a vested remainder interest as the only child of the son that he inherited, the life estate to the son's widow being of no force and effect. The widow for life under terms of the father's deed, with the remainder to the charity as a successor in interest to the son's only child. So I'll put the question up, put the poll up, take some time with this one. All right, we have 54%. Anyone else want to participate? Let's see. All right. We have most people picking D. What who wants to argue for B, C, A, B, C, or D? Any thoughts here?
Well, from my understanding, this could be wrong, but a conveyance to a widow is not okay because a widow could change because a person could remarry. So that's why I chose D, because the child had a vested remainder, in my opinion. I think it was.
Let's analyze that the child had a vested remainder to my son for life, then to my son's widow for life, then to my son's child or children equal shares. Does it sound like the son's child has a vested remainder?
Well, I think it depends if the child is born or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that facts say later that he has a son.
And then what? So he does have a son. The son is born. He had one child. The child was killed. The child left his entire estate to charity. I agree. I think there's no problem here. I think, boom, we're going to the charity, the interest. Now, this isn't a wrap question because there's no possibility that it will vest or not vest within 21 years of the death of the measuring life, right? So
is it D or C? Because I chose C.
Oh.
But you chose D. I don't know if I understood.
The charity, because the son had a vested remainder that he inherited, the life estate to the son's widow being of no force and effect. Why don't you think that the life estate is of force and effect? Does anyone argue
Because,
D over C?
uh,
Take a step back, Grace, and let someone else understand why D over C. Anyone? I understand, wouldn't the answer be C? Anyone think it's D? I think it's D, to be honest. Can anyone explain why they think it's D? 50% of people would pick D.
Yeah, because it just says that it will be left to the wife whenever the son dies, who's the measuring life of the life estate. So then he dies, he's married, and then it says that he died, but then his past children did give it to charity. So then they take the spot that the child was taking. So that's
I
why-
agree with you. The charity's gonna take the spot of the child. My point is, can anyone explain why the life estate, I mean, I just don't like this. The life estate to the son's widow being of no force and effect. Why would there be no force and effect? Why wouldn't she get her life estate?
because from what I read and understood in my studies, a widow could change, so it's not.
It's, I believe a widow's identifiable. Anyone else think it's D or C?
It's because at the moment that he died, she was identifiable.
Exactly, he had a
So
widow.
that's when the measuring point starts, whenever it's able to be executed.
Right. Vested interests are not subject to the rule against perpetuity. So Scarlett was saying, or someone said they didn't understand RAP. I was saying RAP doesn't apply here because it's a vested interest. Rule against perpetuity is going to apply to contingent remainders or vested remainders subject to total divestment or vested remainders subject to open. Things that don't necessarily have to occur. And that's when we're going to do the RAP analysis. Here, there was no need for a RAP analysis. It's important to remember that vested interests are not subject to RAP. Despite the fact that someone was only 6 and his future wife was not yet born at the time, all interests would clearly fail or vest within his life, right? Either he would have a widow or not. The widow's interest in a life estate vested upon her marriage to the son. Likewise, upon his birth. RAP is contingent remainders, executory interests, class gifts, options of first right of refusal, powers of appointment. D is correct. This is a tricky question because many of the facts are designed to create concerns that it violates RAP. It's important to remember, however, that vested interests are not subject to RAP. Interests are vested if there's no condition attached which must be satisfied. The holder of the vested remainder has a present or certain right to take possession of the property when the prior estates terminate. C is incorrect. While a child's vested interest would only become a present possessory right after the widow's death, it did not require survival and was divisible to the charity. The widow's life estate future interest, however, became vested upon her marriage to the son, exactly what Omar said. The charity, as the child's successor in interest, will only be entitled to present possession upon the widow's death. Really tough, but I just want to make one thing clear about this so we can move forward, is RAP does not apply to fully vested remainders, right? If it's guaranteed to vest, it's not going to apply. It's things that may or may not vest, it'll apply to. And if it's possible that it won't vest within 21 years of the death of the measuring life, then we'll have a RAP violation. I know that sounds crazy. I promise you, you can still pass the bar without understanding RAP, but just have it in your mind. Okay.
You said the widow's interest vested when she married the son.
Yeah, because then she was destined to become a widow. Okay. A mother-owned Blackacre, a 2-family apartment house on a small city lot not suitable for partition in kind. We're gonna speed through the rest of these so we can, end in the next 15 minutes and hopefully get to 25. So I appreciate everyone for the polling today. That was awesome. A mother-owned Blackacre 2-family apartment house on a small city lot not suitable for partitioning. Death, her will devised Blackacre to my son and daughter. A week ago, a creditor obtained a money judgment against the son and properly filed judgment in the county where Blackacre is located. A statute in the jurisdiction provides any judgment properly filed shall, from 10 years from filing, be a lien on the real property then owed or subsequently acquired by any person against whom the judgment is rendered. The son needed cash, but the daughter did not wish to sell Blackacre. The son commenced a partition against the daughter and the creditor. Assume the court properly ordered a partition by judicial sale. After the sale, the creditor's judgment will be a lien on all of Blackacre, only one half interest in Blackacre, all of the proceeds of a sale of Blackacre, only the portions of the sale due to the brother. This is a tough one. Let's do one more poll so I can see where the people are at. Let's do one more poll and then we'll go through. All right, let's see what we got. Most people, we had 7 participants. Most people picked D. Does anyone want to argue for D? Anyone want to argue for B? Okay. Anyone else have an explanation for it? Or thought? Anyone have an argument for B?
I got one for D.
Let's hear it, Petey.
So as best as I can explain is that because the brother needed cash and wanted to sell, but the daughter did not, it would only apply to what the brother would sell, and that would be the portion of the proceeds of the sale due to the brother, which are usually, that's what you get after that.
Yep, it was a lien that was filed on real property owned by the person. Now the only thing owned by him is half of the proceeds, right? I like D here too. Good job, Petey. D is correct. In this question, the sister and brother both hold an equal 50% interest in the property as tenants in common. The creditor's lien entitles a creditor property owned by the brother. Thus, after the judicial sale, the creditor will receive a lien on the brother's sale proceeds. So we can annotate that as if a creditor has a lien on a party and the party has a property that is partitioned via sale, the lien attaches to only the parties proceeds of the sale. Excellent. In the chat box again, it seems like the money judgment was personal to the brother. Yeah, exactly. It was. Okay. Let's skip this one. An owner of Blackacre is elderly, unmarried man with no children, no surviving relatives. Blackacre is a large property bordered by forests on the east side, a small stream on the west side, a large hill to the south, and a meadow to the north. There are neighbors to the east, west, and south. The owner is terminally ill and like to leave Blackacre to my neighbor over the hill before he dies. The owner executed a deed conveying Blackacre to my neighbor. The neighbor signed the deed, but the owner signed the deed, but the neighbor did not. Is the deed effective? No, because the grantee did not sign. No, because the grantee is not identified. Yes, because the grantor did sign. Yes, because the grantor and the grantee are identifiable. All right, let's see what the people think. Ooh, this one is more spread out than I thought. A lot of spreading. We got 55% participation, 60 participation, 65. Let's see. A, B, and D. What do we think? Anyone feel strongly about this, that they know what the answer is and didn't just guess?
I think it's B because to my neighbor could be literally anyone. And it's not very clear.
Simple as that. Crush it. A deed must properly identify the grantor and grantee to be effective. Here, they literally made all these facts, like the neighbor to my west, neighbor to my right. So if there's multiple neighbors, then you have to be more specific. A deed must properly identify the grantor and grantee. My neighbor is not sufficient if you have a lot of neighbors, right? I mean, if Adrian left this property to my neighbor, then I'm sure everyone in the neighborhood would claim that it was theirs. Okay. I don't know what you mentioned, by the way, B and D. Nicole, I don't know what that means. No worries, Iona. We're almost finished. Everyone else. 8 years ago, a doctor, prior to moving to a distant city, conveyed Blackacre, an isolated farm, to his son by a quitclaim deed. His son paid no consideration. The son, who was 19 years old, without formal education, without experience in business, took possession of Blackacre and operated the farm, but neglected to record his deed. Subsequently, the doctor conveyed Blackacre to a buyer by warranty deed. The buyer, a substantial land and timber promoter, paid valuable consideration for the deed to him. He was unaware of the son's possession, his quitclaim deed, or his relationship to the doctor. The buyer promptly recorded his deed and began removing timber from the land. Upon learning of the buyer's action, the son recorded the deed and brought appropriate action to enjoin the buyer from removing the timber and to quiet title. The Recording Act of the jurisdiction provides, no conveyance of mortgage of real property shall be good against subsequent purchasers for value without notice unless the same be recorded according to law. In this action, the buyer should blank. Can someone tell me what type of notice statute this is?
A notice.
Pure notice, right? Without notice. Prevail because a warranty deed for valuable consideration takes priority over a quitclaim deed without consideration. Prevail because the doctor's subsequent conveyance to the buyer revoked the gift to the son. Lose because the son's possession charged the buyer with notice. And lose because equities favor the son. I'm just going to speed through these ones. Anyone know what this one answer is?
C, because he was working the land. Gave him
C, because he was working the land, right? C, excellent, good job. C, because inquiry notice, right? He will have inquiry notice because he should have looked. So we can put on our little chat. And I always say, I use this example a lot. If someone has a farm, you are charged with inquiry notice of their possession, right? Simple as that. They had a farm. You should have looked and checked it out. Do a couple more and call it a day. A builder sold a new house to a buyer for use as the buyer's residence. The buyer paid 10% of the purchase price and financed the rest by executing a promissory note and a PMM to the builder. A year later, the buyer missed several mortgage payments to the builder and became unable to make payments. During that year, property values in the neighborhood declined substantially. The builder suggested that the buyer deed the house back to the builder to settle all claims and avoid the costs and other disadvantages of foreclosure. The buyer deeded the house back to the builder. Does the builder now own fee simple title to the house? What is this arrangement called? Anyone know? Not quite, not a deed tax, Barbara. What is this called, this arrangement here?
It's a deed buyback or?
There we go, Paul. A deed in lieu of foreclosure, right? Instead of foreclosing, disadvantages of foreclosure, you're gonna have to hand over the deed. A deed in lieu of foreclosure. What does it need to be? Fair and equitable, right? Fair and reasonable. Not equitable, fair and reasonable. Deed in lieu of foreclosure. Right? So what we can say here is a deed in lieu of, my students are making fun right now, of foreclosure means transferring a deed instead of going through a foreclosure, it is allowable so long as it is fair and reasonable. Right? Deed in lieu of foreclosure means instead of forcing them to sell the house, you're just gonna have them sign over the deed to you. The homeowners association of a small real estate development recently issued through its board a new landscaping rule for every individually owned lot within the community. The new rule stated that from now on, owners and occupants may only plant trees in their front yards. The intended purpose was to prevent the planting of any more maple trees, which had most commonly been planted around the community in the past. The board believes that oak trees will make the entire real estate development more aesthetically pleasing. After the new rule was passed, one resident brought several maple trees and with the intent to plant them in his front yard. The community's governing documents are silent as the board's ability to impose rules on structures or landscaping that owners may place individually on property. Is the new rule enforceable against the owner? Yes, because it's reasonably related to furthering a legitimate purpose of the association. No, because it's not illegal, unconstitutional, against public policy. No, because rules not contained in governing documents are unenforceable. No, because the rule is unreasonable and the association's governing documents do not authorize its enforcement. So here we're talking about a CID, a condo ID thing. I don't forget what that stands for, but a CID. And does anyone know what the answer to this question is?
Should be A.
Should be A, right? We're going to actually apply this standard to CIDs. Furthering legitimate purpose, reasonably related to furthering legitimate purpose. Oh no, we went too fast. This was B.
My bad.
D. No, because the rule is unreasonable and do not enforce it. So this has to do with the planting of trees and being aesthetic. We should have looked at the question. If it's only about aesthetically pleasing, then it's not going to be reasonable. We have to zero in on that. We're going fast. The association's attempt to restrict owners' landscaping only for aesthetic purposes will not be enforceable because it will not pass the reasonable standard. So it has to be aesthetically pleasing, right? See, it's a tough question. Aesthetically pleasing is not going to be okay for these common interest communities or developments called SIDs. So there's a distinction. SIDs are usually created by these legal documents drafted by the developer, which may change according to the community's needs. Now, they apply a reasonable standard, so we know that the standard is reasonably related to legitimate purpose, but aesthetics will not be considered reasonable. That's going to say D. Unless authorized by governing document, a SID association may not impose unreasonable restrictions on the structures or landscaping that are placed on individually owned property, In this case, they're silent and there's a balancing test, and they will not be able to enforce it because it's for aesthetic reasons only. So here, the only reason is for aesthetic, which is not reasonably related to legitimate purpose. So very tough. So CIDs may enforce reasonably related restrictions, but if the purpose is purely for aesthetics, this is not reasonable. I'm glad we always got to get a question wrong so we can really enforce something. That's a really hard one because usually it is reasonable, but there they did make it clear from the question that you had to look for it. Aesthetically pleasing, that's not going to be enough. All right, we'll do a couple more. That was my fault, not yours, Omar. I agree with you, to be honest. I would have, at that rate, I would have got that one wrong. That's why you do have to read slowly. There's so many little tricks to all these. Okay. A landlord leased a commercial building to a tenant for 5 years. Rent was payable on the first day of each month, and the landlord retained the right to terminate the lease if the tenant defaulted. The lease term ended 18 months ago. However, the tenant has stayed in possession of the building and has continued to pay the rent on time. The landlord has continued to accept rent. So what kind of lease do we have now?
Periodic.
Probably periodic tenancy. The fair rental value of the building is now substantially more than what the tenant's been paying, and the landlord recently found a third party who pay a higher rent. When the tenant paid the rent 6 weeks ago, the landlord accepted the rent but told the tenant in writing that she had to vacate at the end of the month. The tenant, who is still in possession of the building, has informed the landlord that she does not want to move out and is willing to pay the current fair rental value. The landlord has asked his lawyer for advice regarding the right to possession. What should the lawyer say? The landlord because he gave proper notice to terminate the tenancy, the landlord because he retained the right to re-enter, the tenant because she stated that she was willing to pay the current fair rental value, the tenant because the landlord has not shown good cause to terminate the tenancy. What do we think the answer is here?
I think it's A.
A.
I agree with you. And I mean, Omar, I agree with you. And I think we're going to redeem ourselves with this one. I think it's A because it reverted to a month to month. And that means a reasonable time is usually a period in advance. And they literally gave him 6 weeks ago. I think it's proper notice. Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you're going to ask a question? Oh. Or they call this a tenancy at sufferance, but then most courts will hold that a periodic tenancy is created if the landlord elects to hold them to another term, right? So,
But what I was gonna say with this one, it's because it says that the tenant made a payment 6 weeks ago.
right, that's right.
More than 4 weeks had already passed, so it was reasonable.
Right, meaning, no, the reason was because 6 weeks ago, he gave him notice. And in that 6 week period where it says,
No, it says that the tenant paid rent 6
Right.
weeks ago, so that means he was late.
no, listen to me, he paid it 6 weeks ago, he accepted the rent, but told him he had to vacate at the end of the month.
Right.
That means that it was proper notice. So that's the main point of that, but I understand you. So if holdover tenant and landlord accepts rent, periodic tenancy will result, and notice is usually 1 full period in advance for eviction notice. All right, excellent. Let's see, maybe I think 2 more. A grantor, A, executed a deed conveying Blackacre to his sister, B. The deed was written in longhand on ordinary paper and stated only that I give all my interest in Blackacre to B. The grantor was illiterate, so the deed was signed with his mark. Shortly after he made the deed, the grantor, A, died intestate, leaving only his sister, B, and his brother's heirs. The grantor's brother, angry that his sister received all the property instead of having to share it with him, challenged the deed in court. Is the document a valid deed? Yes, because it contains all the required elements of a deed. Yes, because the intent may be inferred from the identification of Blackacre. No, because there's no valid consideration for the transfer. No, because the grantor did not write his own name, but only made a mark for signature. What's the answer here, do you think?
A, because of the marking.
I think A, right? It identified the grantor, the grantee, it identified the property, it was totally sufficient. I think they're just, yeah, I think they're just trying to get one on us, right? It's valid. So a valid deed, statute of fraud, which includes identity, words of transfer, description of property, etc. We can take away from this is a deed signature can pretty much be any mark, right? Just because you're illiterate doesn't mean you can't sign something. A woman listed her house for sale with a real estate broker. The woman and the broker, under which the woman agreed that the broker was to be the woman's sole agent during the 6-month period of the listing agreement. The listing agreement was not recorded. The list price for the house was $250,000. The broker produced a prospective buyer who offered to purchase the house for $249,000 and was pre-qualified to purchase at that price. The woman rejected the offer, giving no reason for rejection, and the listing agreement expired the next day. 3 months later, the woman sold the house to a corporation for $249,000. The broker never had any contact. Is the broker entitled to a commission? No, because the listing agreement was not recorded. No, because the woman sold to a buyer found without the broker's help after the expiration of the listing agreement. Yes, because the producer produced a ready, willing, and able buyer during the term of the listing agreement, and the buyer's offer matched the ultimate sales price. Yes, because the woman gave no reason for rejecting the prospective buyer's offer during the listing period. What do you think the answer is to this one? B, C, B, 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 C. Why do we think it's not C? Everyone's saying B. Why do we think it's not C?
because the person that's selling the house, she can reject it.
Why?
It was a right to list agreement, not a right to sell.
Well, no, if you find a prospective buyer who's ready, willing, and able, you have to take that. You can't refuse, but why was it not I would argue, why was it not ready, willing, and able to buy at the match price? Because I would argue
the price.
it was, you were $1,000 short, right? Now, there's an argument, I'm sure whoever picked C is arguing that that's the same price effectively. I would pick B though. I don't think it is the same price. I think you have to bring the 250 up. Did anyone else pick C? No one picked C but Hannah. Hannah, do you think it's still C, or do you think that this matters?
I wasn't even looking at the difference between the 1,000. I was thinking maybe like the 6-month period had expired, but it doesn't seem so. I'm gonna stick with my answer, but I could see.
My argument here is if you find a ready, willing buyer, then you have to do it, even if it's right to list, because, come on. Then that's cheating. Like, you found it, you did your job, you deserve to get paid. But I don't know, is the $1,000, is that de minimis? I don't think so. I think it is important, it's 250. Let's see, you could be right, Hannah. No, it's not de minimis, it is important, right? The woman's rejection is irrelevant because she had, right, she had it. She did not produce a willing because it was less than the listing price in the listing agreement, right? It was $1,000 short. That's what this all came down to. So we have right to list. You must go through with sale if realtor provides ready, willing, and able buyer at the sales price.
Well, it also said for the reason it was correct that the listing agreement did expire. So I think that's a really big part of it too.
That's definitely part of it, but the more important part was if they weren't ready, willing, and able, or C would have been correct. However, $1,000 short of sale price is not a ready and willing buyer. Right, but yeah, once it expires, then you're fine. That's totally important. All right. A man decided to give his farm to his nephew. The man took a deed to his attorney and told the attorney to deliver the deed to the nephew upon the man's death. The man also told the attorney to return the deed to him if he asked. Is that okay right there? Return the deed if he asked?
No, because
No, and why not? Because it was never placed beyond his control, right? That's going to be the answer to this. I don't know if I have to read this question. Maybe I'm going to put myself on a stake here, but I would think that we can just align those facts together. You can. You see, some of these questions are very easy. You don't even need to read it, right? If you give someone a deed, but tell them to return it, if you ask for it, there is no delivery because it has not left your control. Right. There we go. 25 questions. We did get one wrong as we were speeding around, but to be fair, it was a very important thing about the CIDs that this is the standard reasonably related to furthering a legitimate purpose, but if it's only for aesthetic reasons, that is not a legitimate purpose. I know we went 24 minutes over today. I really appreciate you all helping me figure out the polling and stuff. Real property is extremely tough. So spend the rest of the weekend studying real property as much as possible, because next week we're starting with civil procedure, which is even tougher.